There is an interesting phrase in the English language called hoisted with his own petard. Petard means a small bomb. The phrase means a bomb maker is lifted off the ground with his own bomb, or to make it simpler, it means that the bomb maker is blown sky high with his own bomb. Something similar has happened in the Pegasus case and in the pandemic deaths issue. Both issues had torn and continue to tear the country apart. But now we get news that these two ticking bombs have exploded in the faces of those who had made and were playing with these bombs. Media entities like The Wire, the Congress Darbar Media in India, Amnesty International, and many opposition leaders and other personalities like the former Chief Economic Advisor Arvind Subramaniam. Hi, and welcome all to the CAA show. My name is Juggi Bhasin. CAA is, of course, Conversations and Analysis. The case of Amnesty International in this entire fracas is a bit like that of a bomb maker who sets out to plant the device for others only to discover that the bomb has exploded in his face. During the day today, it was reported that Amnesty had washed its hands of the surveillance list and had put out a disclaimer to that effect. Then, later in the evening, yet another disclaimer came from Amnesty that the list of NSO customers being indicative was a false story. To quote them, they say, Amnesty International categorically stands by the findings of the Pegasus project and that the data is irrefutably linked to potential targets of NSO Group's Pegasus project. Amnesty also says that this was a list of numbers marked or targeted as numbers of interest for NSO customers who are various regimes around the world. Now, let us examine the flip-flop statements carefully. Amnesty uses the word potential targets for the NSO group. It does not use the word actual targets. Amnesty uses the phrase numbers of interest for NSO customers. It does not use the phrase numbers marked for surveillance. Decoded, it means Amnesty gives itself a way out by implying that the surveillance probably could have happened or may happen in the future because these numbers were of potential interest to NSO customers. But it does not and cannot authenticate this fact. So, if you ask me, when we look at a Yellow Pages directory, we can look at hundreds of numbers which can be potentially useful for extracting business. But between potential and realizing the potential, there is a world of a difference. There is a reason for the smart play of words. I spoke to some people in the know of these matters, and according to my sources, Amnesty was spooked because of developments in France and Israel. The French President Emmanuel Macron has ordered multiple investigations after his telephone number turned up in the so-called leaked database. Similarly, Israel too has made very similar noises. Now, trust me when I say that organizations like Amnesty take a European investigation far more seriously than, say, an investigation by the Indian authorities. As far as India is concerned, organizations like Amnesty and New York Times, etc., can level any kind of outlandish charges and get away with it. They cannot do the same in Europe or in the United States. Laws are much tougher and more unforgiving for those who lie or those who play around with the truth. At the end of the day, Amnesty is a multinational, and if their falsehoods are exposed in court, the loss to their reputation, especially in Europe and in the West, would be catastrophic to their equity. The flip flop statements were so designed and released to give Amnesty a way out should the matter go to court. Around this time, all this was happening, my sources say that the Israeli firm was really angered by this prevarication of truth and attempts being made to tarnish their reputation. They have sent a letter to The Wire through their counsel threatening a defamation suit against The Wire for making unsubstantiated claims. The entire fracas shows the collusion of media entities in India and foreign human rights groups to launch a smear campaign against the Modi government without proof. And yet, at the same time, keep half a door open for a bailout in case the matter went to court, especially international courts. So, after these flip flops, left holding the surveillance can of lies in India are the Congress Darbar media and hardened opposition personalities who, true to form, will shrug off these developments and continue their rant against the Modi government. But know this, the lies have been exposed and they will further paint themselves in a corner by peddling more and more lies. In another development, somewhat different, yet part of the same narrative, the former chief economic advisor to the government, Arvind Subramaniam, too, hit the headlines with his dramatic announcement. He said that the figure of a little over 4 lakhs dead in the pandemic in India was an undercount, and the actual figure would probably be around 50 lakh dead. I spent some time researching Mr. Subramaniam's assertion and on how he had arrived at that figure. I assumed he would have deployed a huge task force on the ground in India, lots of manpower to collate figures from mortuaries, cremation and burial grounds, official death count, hospital COVID death figures, and perhaps even a ground field survey of the COVID dead in rural India, interiors, and far-flung places to arrive at the truth, the real numbers. My research told me there was no such team on the ground. In fact, not even a single person had been employed or deployed to arrive at this figure. All that Mr. Subramaniam had done was to sit over perhaps filter coffee with 2 other friends and did some, what we say in local lingo, jiggery pokery, or reassemble figures, numbers, and data from 3 pre-existing models. And then, like Mandrake the magician, he produced a Xanadu or a mansion full of suppositions, maybes, and perhaps outright blatant lies. They came up with a number which at best can be described the creation of a fervid imagination, or at worst, a stick to be used deliberately by anti-Modi forces to beat the government to it. And not to forget, the report was compiled and produced not in sweaty, humid, monsoon-hit India, but in the cool climes of the United States. Now, what do we say of such people? And this is the former chief economic advisor we are talking about. The personal hatred such people and entities like The Wire have for Mr. Modi and his government, in one sense, defies rationality. Sadly, we live in an age where education and experience a no hallmark for ethics and fair play of individuals. You will be condemned and vilified whatsoever if you just happen to be on the wrong side politically. But carry on, sirs, because you will never listen to reason. And then, what would life be without the excitement of their assembly line of lies and deception? So, I take your leave on this note. Do subscribe to us and send us your suggestions of the kind of issues you would like us to cover in future episodes. Because remember, besides good talkers, we are also good listeners. Cheers and goodbye, everyone.